Hey guys, it's Sam, and today I'm going to be wrapping up my 2019 reading goals and statistics and talking about my goals for 2020. This topic was actually my Patreon pick for this month, so when I filmed my Disappointing Reads video, it was a few hours before the poll closed for Patreon, and Disappointing Reads was winning by a lot, and then all of a sudden, right before it closed, Disappointing Reads and this one tied, so then I had to do a tiebreaker. In the tiebreaker, this one won. That I'd already filmed and edited my other video. So they both won because there was a tie. As this video is about creativity and growth, this video is also being sponsored by Skillshare. I will talk about them more later. So we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's just get into it. I'm going to start with some 2019 reading stats and things. If you're not interested in that, I will pin a comment down below with the timestamp so that you can just go to the goals wrap up. In 2019, I read 67 books. 6 of those books were DNFs, so 61 were fully completed books. I still don't really know what to do with DNFs because 2019 was the first year that I really DNF'd. Not a lot, because 6 books out of 67 is not a lot, but where I was DNFing a little bit more, so now I'm like, I don't know if I want to include it in my read stats, but at the same time, a lot of these books I DNF'd after 100 pages or more, so I still want to include them a little bit because I did read them and I spent time on them and all of that. So I still haven't figured that out. Maybe in 2020 I will, but that's why I sort of said, like, I picked up 67 things, but I completed 61. Just like 2018, my average star rating was 3.4 stars. So I like that. I like having a nice bell curve type thing, and it to be a little bit more than halfway because I'd like to think that I'm pretty good at picking books that I'm going to enjoy, and I want to read more things in the 4 and 5 star category than the 2 and the 1. So I'm okay with that. I'm wondering in coming years how this is going to change because I do think I'll be better at DNFing more. So those lower star ratings that those DNF books would have gotten if I would have completed them would be affecting my star rating. So I kind of wonder if my overall star rating is going to go up. We'll see. 57% of the books that I read were fantasy, so that's 38 books. 19% were science fiction, so that's 13 books. And 12% were romance, which is 8 books. I would have never thought at the beginning of the year that I would have had that many romance books read. And here we are. Now, since some of my reading goals really had to do with focusing on my TBR, I do want to mention that 36 books were books that I'd already had on my TBR before 2019. So that's fantastic. That's 53% of the books read. So over half of what I read was stuff that was already on my TBR, which is really great just because I was trying to get my TBR down a lot in 2019. So with that being said, I read about 6 books on average. Obviously some months were a lot more, some were a lot less. And then on average, I bring in 4.5 books per month on average. So that is where my TBR didn't get down quite as much as I would have wanted it to, but I still made a decent chunk, but when I'm only reading on average about 6 and bringing in about 4, that doesn't really make a giant dent per month, you know? But I was still really strict about what books I brought in and only things that I was interested in prior to them coming in, with the exception of some like Owl Crate books that I got in subscription boxes that I just was like, this sounds cool, but I think I'll get even more strict about that in the coming years. I read 7 5-star books and I had 2 1-star books. So low on both ends of the spectrum, although I'm very happy that there's more 5 stars than 1 stars, obviously, but a lot of my favorites I rated 4 stars, not 5. This was a really interesting stat that I wasn't quite expecting, but I'm very happy about. 61% of the books that I read were adult books, and only 36% were YA. I don't really know how that happened. I think because I did have a lot of books on my TBR that I was sort of saving that were adult books that were bigger and more intimidating, so I read more of them this year. I don't know, but I do feel like overall I had a better reading year. I mean, like I said, I only had a couple of 1 stars. I DNF'd a lot of things that I wasn't really enjoying. I feel like I very definitively know my tastes, and almost all of the books on my favorites of the year were adult books, with one exception, but that is the Witchland series, and that series really reads more as adult anyway. So in my opinion, like, all the books on my favorites list this year were adult, which is interesting because usually it's about 50-50, usually skewed a little bit more adult, but still. So I was really surprised that really all of my favorite books this year were adult. And 49% of the books that I read were by new to me authors, which is interesting as well, not something that I quite expected. So I am interested in that as well because a lot of my favorites do tend to be like continuations in series and stuff, and I didn't focus a lot on series this year. I focused a lot on getting stuff off my TBR, so I do feel like I started more series this year, so that was a lot more of this like new to me author thing, but then in this year I'm trying to tackle series more, which I'll talk about in a second. So I feel like I'm gonna have a lot less new to me authors this year, but we'll see. If you're wondering how I track all my reading stats, I use Sophie's spreadsheet from Portal on the Pages. I will link the most recent one down below, and I do make some edits to suit me better. I've been using her spreadsheet now. This is the third year in a row that I've been using her spreadsheet, and she changes it up a bit every year, but I will link that down below if you're interested, and I kind of make some tweaks to it and add some different pages and things. This year I added like a series page and things like that, so it's a little bit more personalized, and that's what I do all day New Year's Day, is I just like tweak my reading spreadsheet, and then I just leave it and I just enter things, and it's good to go. Okay, now we're getting to the actual goals. Most of these were all revolving around getting my TBR down, as you guys know. The first goal was that I wanted 20 books or less on my TBR by Christmas. I did not attain this. I got to 36 books on my TBR by Christmas and 34 by the end of the year. I think I could have gotten to this if I hadn't had the big anxiety flare of 2019, in which I couldn't read a lot of the books on my TBR. I was getting books from the library, I was getting books on Kindle, I was reading more romance. That's when the romance popped up. And so those were all new to me books. So those 8 romance books that I read were all new to me books. So that's a big chunk right there that I would have taken out of my TBR if I would have been able to continue reading my like fantasy and sci-fi, but I was so anxious, mostly because of situational things I've now identified. So I think now that I'm moving and getting back into a space that is much more soothing for me and just better for my mental health overall, I think things will be better for my reading this year, hopefully. But yeah, I didn't quite make it, but I made a very decent chunk. I got very ruthless about unhauling books and just not bringing books in, and I'm gonna continue to hone that skill. Number 2 was try to read books within 6 months of getting them. This is sort of hard because obviously I wanted to get the books that have been on my TBR the longest off first, but then if I got new books, I wanted to read them pretty quickly, and I tend to want to read books within 6 months anyway. That's the whole point of trying to get my TBR down, because if I get my TBR down to a level in which I can read all the books in my TBR within 6 months, so it's constantly cycling through books every 6 months, then I'm most excited about it. Of those 67 books that I read this year, 30 of those were books that I read within 6 months of getting them. So I am mostly interested in and most likely to pick up based on mood books that I have gotten more recently. I'm just more interested. The longer books sit on my shelf, regardless of how much I wanted to read them when I got them, I just tend to lose interest in them. Unless it's series, but even so, I still want to kind of continue series within 6 months of the last book that I read in it. So this whole like getting books read within 6 to like maybe 8 months is like the golden timeline for me that I'm trying to get to. My third goal was to read about 15 minutes a day during the weekday and then 30 minutes a day on the weekends. This was just kind of like a vague goal that I knew wouldn't be perfect by any means. I did this more in the first half of the year than with just work stress and just time and stuff. This didn't quite happen as much during the week because reading was adding to my stress at times and just like not good for my anxiety and all this stuff. So I do overall tend to read a ton more on the weekends. I will have like probably 3 hours a day of reading on the weekends, generally speaking, and not so much during the week. But towards the end of the year, I did start to kind of incorporate reading about 15-20 minutes a day, because I would try to read about 15 to 20 pages a day, and I read about a page a minute. So that was happening a bit more again towards the end of the year. And I still want to kind of work in reading more daily and just making that a goal, because that's how I read more books. And so I've incorporated in more audiobooks towards the end of the year as well, and that kind of adds to it. So this is something that I'm not setting as a concrete goal for next year, but I will continue to try to incorporate reading more. Also, by cutting out other meaningless things that I do, like scroll through social media. I'm on such a huge kick right now of like just not leaving social media, because I do think social media can be valuable, but just like cutting back my time on it and filtering out any like of the useless noise and just not wasting time on it, and then reading more. Then I have a little mini goal thing that I did that I forgot about until I watched my video right before I did this video of all of my goals from last year, and I had a certain series that I laid out that I wanted to finish, and I guess I didn't really write this down anywhere, so as the year went on, I forgot about this. I knew that I did want to catch up on 5 series that was in my spreadsheet, but I had actual series that I talked about that I wanted to catch up on, and I didn't actually follow that. A few of them I did. I said I wanted to catch up on the Villain series, and I did. I read Vengeful. I didn't like it. I said I wanted to catch up on the Shatter Me series by rereading the Shatter Me trilogy and then reading Restore Me. I actually did not do this, didn't want to do this, and unhauled Restore Me. I wanted to catch up on Our Bright Ascendancy, the first book being The Tiger's Daughter. I had the second book at the beginning of the year, I believe, and I didn't end up doing this, but now I have both books and I do plan on reading those this year. Then I talked about The Republic of Thieves, the third book in the Gentleman Bastard series. Didn't end up doing this because the next book wasn't released as far as like a release date yet, and I continue to say that I will not read Republic of Thieves until we have an actual release date for The Thorn of Emberlane. And the fifth one was to finish the Illuminae files with Obsidio, which I did that and didn't like it. So before we continue into the 2020 goals, I do want to talk about Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives and offers thousands of classes for creative and curious people on various topics such as photography, creativity, freelancing, illustration, and more. Skillshare has classes for any type of schedule or skill level, and members get unlimited access to thousands of inspiring classes with hands-on projects and feedback from fellow community members. Skillshare has recently launched some new classes as well. Some exciting classes you may want to be inspired by in the new year include classes like Real Productivity, How to Build Habits That Last, which is great if you're trying to start some new habits for 2020, or Instagram-worthy photography, shoot, edit, and share, if you're trying to build your Instagram brand this year. Skillshare can help you in exploring new skills, deepening some existing passions, and getting lost in creativity that you might not even known you had. Skillshare is incredibly affordable with an annual subscription costing less than $10 a month. Click the link in the description to get 2 free months of premium membership and explore your creativity. So now let's get on to my reading goals for 2020. Actually very excited for my goals in 2020. I really like setting goals for reading. At first I wasn't sure what I really wanted to do, and then when I got a concrete idea, I was like, yes, I feel very inspired, let's go. So I'm still continuing my journey to get my TBR down. That's still like the ultimate goal. I've been enjoying this. I have not felt like I'm depleting my life of books by not having this giant TBR. Like I feel just more, it's more curated, it's less cluttered. I don't feel like oppressive guilt about having so many books that I'm not getting to, especially because I know my peak enjoyment is like within the first 8 months of getting them. So that's why I'm still striving for that. So my first goal is actually a midway year goal. A couple of these are, so I'll be checking in mid-year for sure, like I did last year as well, but definitely checking in because a lot of my goals are for the end of June 2020. So by the end of June 2020, I want to read, or DNF if I want to, books that have been on my TBR from before 2019. There are 9 books total. 2 of them I'm actually already reading. So the first is Way of Kings. That has been on my TBR since August 12th, my birthday of 2016. Then The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss. This is a very short story that I can probably get off my TBR soon. The Black Prism by Brent Weeks is from my birthday in 2017. The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu was also my birthday 2017. This is a book that I started and put down, so this could be a potential DNF if I pick it back up again and still don't like it. Then Abaddon's Gate by James S.A. Corey, and that was from February of 2018. City of Lies by Sam Hawke, which was from June of 2018. I'm currently reading this one. The Shadowed Sun by N.K. Jemisin, which is from August of 2018. I just have this last book in the duology. I read the first book last year. The Phoenix Empress by Kate Arsenault Rivera, which I mentioned with my wrap-up that I didn't get to this year. That is from October of 2018. And The Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Egan, and that is from November of 2018. I'm currently listening to that on audiobook. Now, all of these books, except for one, are over 400 pages, and 7 of them are over 500 pages, with one of them being over 1,000. So that's why I'm doing it for June, giving myself some time, but really trying to just like chug away at these. And the first half of the year I'm hoping is a really good reading time. I'm moving back home. I'm just gonna have more like rest and relaxation and time for reading and things. So I'm really hoping to make a giant dent in these and get these read by June. So with that being said, I want to get my TBR, my physical TBR, under 30 by the end of June as well. I'm starting the year with 37 books on my TBR. Now there are some books, kind of like I mentioned last year, that I don't plan on reading this year, like continuations of some series, like The Wise Man's Fear. I'm not gonna read until we have another book released. There's a couple other books in my TBR that I have like later books in the series, and I haven't read the newest one yet, so I'll swap those out as I read them, that kind of thing. I'm not adding those to my TBR like in numbers. And then there's also some books that I'm not sure I want to read, have some darker triggering content, and I'm not gonna put them on my TBR right now, and my mental health is still like better than it was in the fall, but like, So I'm putting those on like the later TBR pile and not including that in the 37 number. So if I keep my same averages that I mentioned from 2019 and read on average about 6 books a month and bring in 4.5 books a month on average, by the end of June, I'll be at 28 books on my TBR. I hope to surpass that and get below 25, but my goal is below 30 by the end of June. My third goal is to complete 5 series. I discovered when I made my spreadsheet for the series this year that I have 35 started and unfinished series. And I do have 5 series that I have selected for this because I think they'll be the easiest and they're ones I'm really motivated to read and excited about and all of that. So the first is the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I have this last book, Assassin's Quest. I'm actually going to be listening to this on audio, and I plan to listen to it when I'm on my drive home the end of this month, moving home, because it's a chunk of an audiobook. So I plan on listening to most of it on that drive. Then, as previously mentioned, I do have the Dream Blood duology by N.K. Jemisin, so I do plan on reading this second book in the series, and it's on my shelf, which is again why I picked that as one of the series I wanted to read. The third series is the Amberlow Dossier by Laura Elena Donnelly. I read the first 2 books in the series last month on audiobook in December and plan on finishing that possibly this month, maybe next month, the last book in the series also on audio. The fourth series is the Folk of the Air series, with the last book being The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. I do not yet own that book, so that's why it's longer down the list, and I wanted to prioritize these books that I already do own in these series that I can finish up. But I do plan on acquiring Queen of Nothing within the year and finishing that series. And the fifth series I want to finish is the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden, the last book being Winter of the Witch. I do not own that one either, but I do plan on getting it at some point this year. It's very high on my wish list along with Queen of Nothing, so I'm figuring if I don't get it by my birthday in August, I'll get it for my birthday. And my fourth goal, which will happen most likely towards the end of the year, is catch up on some graphic novel series, my favorite graphic novel series that I'm currently reading. The first series is Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I've read up to the 5th Bind Up, and it's been years since I've read this, so I do plan on rereading all of these series before going on and continuing. The second series is The Wicked and the Divine. I've read up to the 3rd volume, and I own 2 more of the volumes, and then there's more since then that have been released, and all of these are my favorite graphic novel series. This one might be my absolute favorite. Hard to decide. Then we have Descender by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Egan, and I only have the first 2 volumes of this. I believe there's at least 2 more out. And last but not least, we have Monstrous by Sana Takeda and Marjorie Liu. I have the first 2 volumes that I've read, and I think there's also 2 more out in this as well. I adore all of those series, and like I said, I'll be rereading the volumes that I already have before continuing on, but I do feel like that'll be a second half of the year thing, because I'll be getting a lot of the novels off my TBR first before focusing on the graphic novels and buying more graphic novels and things like that. So that is it for my 2020 reading goals. Like I said, in June I'll be definitely doing like a mid-year check-in and then possibly setting some additional goals if I meet the ones that I wanted to meet before getting to June. So I will update you guys then. Please comment them below and let me know what some of your reading goals are. I'm also willing to add more to my list if any of your guys's are really great ideas. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.